Okay, and welcome to another episode of the DeadThree Coaching Show. I'm George Evjen, and another guest that I have with us today from my experience with the Ben Newman Coach-to-Coaches program is Charlie Ruiz, and super excited. I believe maybe my fourth guest from that group, and boy, has that group really been valuable for me. And getting just to know these folks and get to have conversation with them, get to learn from these people. And Charlie and I met through that program, but we spent an hour or so a week or so ago, about an hour, just kind of, I guess, some of the issues I'm going through and some of the questions I have and some of the life moments I'm experiencing. Charlie was kind enough to reach out to me and say, hey, let's talk about this. And so he gave me some great perspective. And at the tail end of that conversation and him counseling and coaching me, which was great, and I really appreciate that that hour you spent with me, Charlie. That I said, hey, let's get together and just have another conversation about what you're doing, and so with that, man, Charlie, I really appreciate again you spending some time with us and getting to learn from you and your experiences. So thank you for the time that you have today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. Pick up from last week. I'm excited.
Yes, and so let's just get right into it. So we met on that program, but I want to jump into your athletic career. For those that don't know, and I'm still kind of getting familiar with your background a little bit, but tell us your background and where you grew up. And really, I mean, you were a Major League Baseball player. You played, I believe, at Long Beach State is where you may have played. Give us your background athletically and that journey you took.
Yes. I'll start with minor league. I wish I made it to the bigs.
Okay.
Minor league, but still very fortunate to be able to live a dream of being a professional baseball player. So I'll just start with there, and then we'll back it. Born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, but I never had thought that I would ever have a chance to be able to sign a professional contract. And I just lived on a baseball field. But I think you could be attested to this. Basketball was my first love. You just get to the certain point where you find that you're 6'1" and you're not growing anymore. And then you find out that maybe you have a little bit of extra miles an hour on a fastball, and maybe you got a shot to get a scholarship and maybe be the first one to go to college for your family and get a scholarship. And that was a path, right? So it was never like I knew it was going to happen. I just loved the game of baseball. Found myself having a good year here in the Bay Area, junior college kid. No scholarship, went and grinded for 2 years, and then was fortunate to land a dream scholarship at the Long Beach State down in Southern California.
Now, I don't know too much about, I'm a baseball fan. Yep. I know people have told me there's actually more going on in a baseball game than an average fan would even understand, which I appreciate. So when I do get together with baseball people, I'm fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by the strategies, the tactics, and the whole game when you find somebody that knows it. I just say that I don't know much about it, but I kind of know a little bit. Like Long Beach State's no joke, right? Like they're really a power or used to be. Maybe they still are, but I think, when I grew up, I'm 51 years old. So when I grew up in kind of the 90s, I remember Long Beach State maybe being a power. Is that fair?
Yeah, which is why it was kind of a dream of mine. I never expected it. They were. Now, of course, with NIL and Power 5 and all the shifting in college sports, as you know, it shifted a bit, right? The Big West is shifted. It's considered a mid-major. But yes, Long Beach State, the Dirtbag name, I like to say I was a former Dirtbag, and then I have to clarify, like Dirtbag was the name of our team. Powerhouse, right? You're talking Jason Giambi's, Jared Hughes, and then they started to get, Jared Weaver. And they started to get the Troy Tulowitzkis, the Evan Longorias, and they put out a lot of Major League Baseball players. At one point, I think they had more big leaguers in the league than any other Division I program. And you would imagine me being a junior college kid, feeling like I got lucky to get an opportunity when they called me in the 10th round of 2009. Right, it was a dream to say yes and be able to put on the Dirtbag jersey.
So, like on that, I've often wondered this. So I think you're exactly right. The Big West, mid-majors, Long Beach State. I'm kind of thinking basketball, like they're not even on the radar. Maybe there's a team every once in a while from the Big West that may go out and kind of crush it in college basketball, et cetera. I'm curious on those names you just rattled off. Even I know those names. Like those aren't everybody knows those names if you're an athlete. and you follow baseball even a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious how a program like Long Beach State is able to sustain that and attract that level of talent when they're just okay. Like they really are. Like, I don't mean like, that's not disparaging at all to your alma mater or anything, but it's like, you know, those mid majors, it was like kind of like when Gonzaga made it in basketball. You're like, how does that team, like what was it about that program? Coaches, California, like how do you get that level of talent? How do you sustain it? What's the attraction to it? What was the culture like? What did they sell you to have that program be so good?
Culture, right? I think culture and like the history of the program. Now, here's the thing. I will say this as a caveat or maybe a disruption to the thought is that we weren't the best the year that I signed. We did not have the best year, and I just came off of being at a junior college that to me was like the quintessential. Like it was probably the two most transformative years that I had in baseball, and that was at Chabot Junior College in Hayward, California. That had, again, that culture and that pedigree. It was the brotherhood, right? It was to be a gladiator. So I had this like 2 years at Chabot Junior College that really was a sense of we are one. Like this is truly a family. So then when I left and I got to the Long Beach State, I went there because it was the same. That's what they were pitching, right? Like this is you wear the dirtbag name with pride, and you always will. And I was fortunate to meet a lot of people who do, right? Again, some of the names that I listed. However, right, when you struggle, and now with NIL and things coming in and out, you don't have as many homegrown people there anymore. Funny enough, coincidentally, they just brought back one of my infield coaches that was there, who went to UCLA, won a championship. His name is TJ Bruce, went over to TCU, spent some time in Reno, and now he's back. So it was actually a big deal to get this guy back home to bring back that culture that I think has maybe not been there as much from someone homegrown. So I think to answer your question, it is about the culture and wearing a uniform with pride to say, this is who we are. And it's not just about the name. It's about the grit. It's about the grind. It's about like what you are doing as in this case, dirtbag.
I wonder how hard that is to build. Like everybody, you know, everybody talks culture when they get to college athletics. And when I see these coaches go before the press conference, once they get hired, culture, like everybody kind of speaks that. And I'm always curious on, like, I get wrapped up in this. And if you've listened to the podcast, I not you particularly, but if anybody has listened to the podcast, I talk about being in this middle 80. And like, I feel like I'm in that middle 80. And when I had, a coach Ted Rath from the Philadelphia Eagles on the other day, we talked about that 80, right? And these mid majors and most of these programs are in the 80. And like, how do you get yourself out of that? And I understand it's culture and it's coaching and it's expectations and it's accountability and it's training and all that. I'm just fascinated by those teams that are able to go from that middle to that top 10% and then sustain it. Like it's not just a one-off, right? So I'm always kind of fascinated by that. But to your point, it's culture. Is it more than that? Is it like, were there specific things about the culture that maybe that experience, that culture, that family, now that you work professionally, and kind of building that, right? Like you're building that with the teams you work with the consulting you do, with the talking, with the speaking engagements you have. What have you taken with you from the culture that is more specific that you try to implement in your speaking, your consulting, and the teams you work with professionally?
I think it's the word you just used, right? Specific, right? Specificity. I think having been at the communications agency that I was at, for years, and then working with, the Googles, the Airbnbs, these top sales and technology companies, right? A lot of them have these words, right? These values, right? We're curious, we're this. And then when you ask somebody specifically, what does that actually mean here?
Yes.
Or what does that actually mean to you, right? It's different, right? What direct or firm means to George may mean something different to me. So if we have an organization that has these core values or words that we like to use, being able to ask them specifically, what does that mean here, I think is where people miss. And that's a point of emphasis for me, right? If I go and I'm working with the sales organization, or I'm at an offsite and I'm facilitating a high performing team's conversation, and I have an engineering leader who says, "Oh, this is what this concept means on my team," and then this is what this concept means on my team in product. Same value. Let's say it's curiosity or candor. They mean different things. We're already speaking a different language. So I like to make sure that we're all speaking the same language and we have a name that is specific, not just to the individual, but the team. And then we start. Like that's when we started until we can actually get specific and name the things that we're trying to solve for.
Right. It's funny you bring that up because I have spent a fair amount of time over the last couple weeks just on those thoughts that you just said. And you said it perfect. But this idea of values and people putting words on boards. And I listened to Simon Sinek and a gentleman named Rich DeVinny, a Navy SEAL, and Rich DeVinny wrote a book called The Attributes that I've talked about a fair amount on the podcast. And most people know Simon Sinek. But these values of curiosity or innovation or encouragement or, integrity, right? Those are just things you put on the wall, right? But to your point of being really specific, that's what I'm actually investigating right now for myself and my own message and my own, ability to kind of convey that to organizations. So it's interesting that you bring it up because I'm still struggling with that, but you were really good. You made a really good point that resonated with me on how to do that, just being specific and then getting organizations to kind of communicate what that means to the different silos that people may be under. Like, what's integrity mean? What's communication mean? And so it's really effective for me, what you said. Before I get into what you're doing now, because I'm super curious on that, but there's a gentleman that's a mentor of mine. His name's Ed Molitor. He lives up in Chicago and he's outstanding. And he had a guy, I forget his name. I want to say it's Scott Allen, but he was the CEO of Madison Square Garden and like that umbrella that kind of is the New York Rangers and Islanders, whoever it is. They're the Rangers, the Islanders, and Madison Square Garden, not the others. But he made the comment about how he looks for athletes when he hires and why that's important, right? And I didn't obviously play at your level. In terms of athletic performance, I have been involved in college athletics as a coach. But you went to that, you went to a very high level and maybe steps away from the highest level. Right. And so I'm curious your perspective on that of hiring athletes, how that has served you, what you get from it, why you think employers and other places, the Googles and the Oracles and other places that you've been a part of, why that might be of value to them.
Talk all day about that, George. I think a few things come to mind, and it's part of the reason why I do what I do. It's as an athlete, I think you have this different operating system, right? That you typically show up with, an operating system that helps with failure, right? That understands, again, I don't know why sometimes these Zoom things.
That's perfect, right?
But agreed, right? So the ability to fail and bounce back, to be able to understand what self-motivated work looks like, to be able to understand that when you are getting feedback, it's actually a good thing, like a good thing, and not look at it as, hey, this isn't helping me. And the more and more I studied and the more and more I realized and kind of hid back from my athletic background, I realized that was actually my differentiating piece.
Right.
And I didn't know that because I was trying to live and tell a story that was outside of my athletic identity, which is, again, a whole nother conversation we can go into. But now I know that it's important. Top sales leaders, CEOs, product leaders, the ones who have some sort of athletic background, they move a bit differently, and it's an operating system. And that's actually coined from another organization that I'm with, kind of in partnership with, called The Post, that literally helps and is a community for former professional athletes and Olympians. And they like talking about it as the athlete operating system. So I got to make sure I call that out because I just
I like that. But let's talk about that then. Like, I do see it. So this gentleman that was a part of Madison Square Garden, when he was talking about it, and I agree with this. It's the work ethic, it's the communication, it's the problem solving, it's being with a team, it's being resilient, like you say, like falling down and having to get back up. It's, all that sort of stuff. The competitiveness, right? I've gotten a little bit in trouble with being competitive in the software world. Like, I never apologized for it. I was like, no, like, we got to want to be the best. We got to want to win, right? Why did you shy away from that? When you got out of athletics and you got into consulting and speaking and the technology industry, why would you have shied away from that and not led with it and leaned into it?
I think because I saw the other side of people who just saw themselves as one-dimensional. And I always thought the best leaders, the best athletes I know, and the best coaches are dynamic, and they know how to be more than one-dimensional. So for me, I think I had been raised and been around a lot of people who were just like, I'm ex the baseball player. And I'm like, that's just one side of you. Like, no, you're a communicator, you're a leader, right? You have all these other components of you. So for me, when I got into the business world and people would introduce me sometimes, it's like, oh, this is the baseball guy. I'm like, I'm not the baseball guy. I'm Charlie, right? I'm a storyteller. I'm a team lead. Like, I'm all these other things. Like, don't pigeonhole me as just the athlete. Until I realized that some of these attributes, as you speak about, was actually rooted in my athletic identity. So now I fully embrace it. Now I own it because it is who I am.
It's part of who you are, right? So you can still lead with everything else. Like, you're a great speaker. I've listened to some of your content, super charismatic, driven, super knowledgeable and intelligent in those different verticals and industries that you have. And you're also a baseball player. So there's all this sort of stuff, right? So it's all a part of you, but you just tried to have that be down. Like, you tried to lead with the other stuff. And now, how did that impact you when you led with it? Like, did it change how people looked at you? Did it open doors for you? Or did it not really have much of an impact when you leaned into it?
So what happened when I first leaned into it? I think it was first almost like a release. Refer to that as I hadn't processed the retirement, the forced retirement, my surgery ending, my career like abruptly. So I think it was a bit of a release of, hey, you aren't alone and other people are going through this. So by you leaning into it and talking about it, compared to you feeling like you are bragging or talking about your activity, your background, no, you are actually helping other people. And in which turn, someone called me out. A dear friend of mine was like, you're being selfish by not telling your story because somebody else may be going through that and you can help them. So then when I leaned into it and started talking about it, let's say 2.5, 3 years ago, I realized there was a lot of other people that were going through it. And then in turn, those are the people that I was helping was actually myself. But it took 7.5 years to do that.
Yeah.
Part of why I talk a lot about identity because of that.
So go back a little bit then, because I am curious on this. So you probably, when you were going through Long Beach State and you got drafted and you're working your way through the minor leagues, I'm guessing at this. I'm making an assumption here.
Yeah.
You probably didn't have very many, and maybe you did, limiting beliefs that this wasn't going to work. I bet you were like, no, I'm making it to the league. This is my career. I'm this good. I got drafted. I'm going to outwork and grind everybody and all this sort of stuff. So this investment that you might have had in that and your beliefs and your dream, that's probably been a dream forever. What I'm leading to is it's all taken away, right? So then you get this injury and you've invested so much, your life, your work, the grind of getting up and batting practice. Like, I'm just thinking about like the investment that like my boys have made for their craft, right? And now they're younger and they're in high school, but it's still significant. It's still their life, right? That was taken from you. So when you face that reality that you were in, how how did you handle that? Like, what happened? Like, what was your mindset when you're like, oh shit, this is over. Like, this is over. And everything I did, what was your mindset, and how did you handle that? And then how did you cope with it, and how did you overcome it?
I refer to it as a slow burn. It wasn't like a one and done thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I realized in the moment when I had gotten hurt and my career was over, it was 2 years of rehabbing. So I had a lot of time to process it. But I think overall, I had always felt like I got lucky to even be there. So oddly enough, I felt more grateful than anything.
Some gratitude.
Because
right?
I didn't expect it.
Right.
Again, you're talking 2 years of varsity baseball. That's it. Junior college, felt like I got lucky with a scholarship. To sign in the 10th round, like everything was, I felt like I was playing with house money until I got there and was like, oh no, you got this. Like, you can do this. You're seeing other people do it, to where then when it was taken away from me, and I told myself, get to 25. If you're not in AA or AAA, it's going to be time to start considering what's that next option for you. It was just fast forwarded 2 or 3 years to where at that point, like, how did I go through it? I gave myself the 20 months. The doctor said you got a 20% chance to recover because you had both your labrum and cuffs scoped to where it was like it was fully reconstructive surgery. I feel like I didn't have a shot anyways. I was like, I'm playing with house money. If I come back and I even get another chance, that's a dream in itself. So when it all happened, it wasn't about being devastated that the career was over. It was more about the fact that I didn't feel like I got to fully ride out the potential that I had. And that was the hardest part, which took me time to have to close that chapter, which I'm happy to talk about how I closed that chapter.
Yeah. One question, and then, yes, I want to know how you closed the chapter and how you moved on. But you have me thinking about your skills as an athlete, because I want to position this to our skills professionally.
Yes.
And where we're at in personal development. Me at 51 years old.
Yes, sir.
What were you, and there is a question to this. There's a deeper question than these next two. But what were your strengths as a player?
I was a lead by doing guy. I was not a rah-rah guy. So me being a pitcher on the mound at the end of the game, I think it was being able to have a short memory. And also to have this almost tenacity and conviction that I am the best person on the field at this exact moment, because nobody else can be that person except the person who has the ball at the mound at the end of the game. So there was this sense of like unbelievable confidence and conviction that I threw 100 miles an hour, even though I was throwing 80 to 90. So it was like a false sense of confidence and belief outside of anything that I probably would have ever even thought someone like me should have.
Go ahead, finish. Go ahead.
And then on top of that, the ability to be able to tap into the mindset and the mental performance side of the game that allowed me to be able to stay calm and be collected when everything else in the game speeds up. And that's what I just gravitated towards. And that was what set me up to go to Long Beach State, to sign with the Rockies, and to be able to have success. That was the linchpin of what allowed me to continue to perform.
Boy, that's I have a follow-up question to that, but man, that's not baseball stuff. For those that are listening, like, that's not baseball stuff. Like, that's life, that's personal development. It's all that, right? There was somebody that was speaking about getting things to slow down, and that comes through preparation and confidence. What were your weaknesses? Because I have a question on strengths and weaknesses right after this. Like, what were your weaknesses as an athlete?
What were my weaknesses as an athlete? Other than maybe the physical side of
even if it's physical, like if I had this, whatever, like I wasn't great at this.
I couldn't really throw an inside fastball, which is very tactical. However, I'd say the overall weakness for me on the baseball field was probably my assumption my assumption and my communication skills at the time that people would just inherently get it, right? Like I would lead by doing, and then I would communicate probably in a way that wasn't as clear and concise to be able to help my team get better. To where then I'd say, just watch me, just watch me. So I never felt like I was the best player coach, and would just default to just watch me, like catch up, keep up.
Right.
Whereas if I was better at communicating, then maybe I would have taken on more of a leadership role and had more conviction in my leadership voice when I was actually playing.
I love that. I love that. One of the things that changed my life was when somebody randomly, and I knew the word and I knew what it meant. I just never really processed it or gave it the attention it probably deserved, was just being self-aware. Right. And the self-awareness, like just being really self-aware of who I am, what I'm doing, strengths, weaknesses, goals, all that sort of stuff. The reason I ask those questions, though, is this. I'm wondering, as I navigate my life and those that are listening are navigating their lives, and that we can identify our strengths and weaknesses as we navigate our I use the phrase, our journey to greatness, as we just continue to grind it and try. Should we be doubling down on our strengths, or should we be spending time on those weaknesses and getting better? Like, should we figure out, like, man, I suck at this, and I know if I was better at this, it impacts me here, but I'm really, really good here. And should I spend my energies there? Like, where should I be focused? Like doubling down on strengths and getting those to just be absolutes, or leveling up what I suck at?
Talk to me 10 years ago. I'm saying, understand the weaknesses, get self-aware, and tap into that. Now I'm doubling down, tripling down on the strength. With the caveat that you have to be able to know what those weaknesses are, so that you can then get the support, or I call them like your starting five, to be able to guide you in those areas. But I'm tripling down on my strengths and who I am and what I do and what I bring to the table, because that's what makes me, right? That is where I am confident, and I have not just the conviction, but I have the tenacity and the grit and the resilience, because I know that this is what I do. That's what's powerful when you step into this next phase, with the caveat that you know what, Charlie, you aren't the best operator. Great. That is a weakness of yours. Go get somebody that can help operate these areas of your life or your business, so that you can go do the thing that you were damn good at. But it's the awareness. It's both. So it's both.
What are you tripling down on then? What are your strengths? As you run your business and get out speaking and consulting, and I know you're trying to definitely have an impact on these organizations, like impact and providing value and all that. What are your strengths? What are you tripling down on right now?
Connection, the ability to connect people, ideas, thoughts in one setting, and create a space where people can actually show up in their full self. Right? So authenticity is a buzzword. Yet, when I talk to people and know my message, my storytelling ability, right, that tripling down on my ability to bring stories and make it relatable for humans outside of theory, and focus on action through a storytelling element, and then to pull that from George, pull that from a Tyler, pull that from a Susie, and to be able to have them share that and connect that idea, that concept together. I don't think that there's anyone better, right? Like, I truly believe that my ability to connect and facilitate ideas, people's, and thoughts in a relatable way, a human way, is something that I'm tripling down on, which is part of where I'm getting ready to launch and put myself out there from a group coaching format, but not in the traditional sense that a lot of group coaching programs are sold as.
Boy, there's like 3 or 4 things that I wanted to get back to. Let's circle back. Like, I'll say this. I said this. I had Alan Stein Jr. on. I don't know if you know Alan Stein. Alan Stein Jr. is a basketball guy. He used to be a trainer, worked with Kevin Durant, Carmelo Anthony, and all this. And I had him on years ago. And I said, man, like, you get the band at the corner bar when you know they're going to be playing Arrowhead Stadium in front of, like, it's one of those things, right? And I told him that. I was like, man, like, right now you're on my podcast. we are the corner bar and you're just singing songs, but one day you're going to be in Arrowhead in front of 80,000 people. And like, you're just going to crush it, man. You've got something about you. You've got this confident humility, and your language and your tone and all that. Like, I'm so happy that you're on the podcast, because it's one of these things, like I said to Alan Stein, I was like, I know how this ends for you. Right. And I'm saying the same thing to you, man. You're just going to crush it, because I know how this ends for you, and it's going to be awesome. And I'm going to enjoy watching it happen.
George, thank you. Thank you for that. I really appreciate hearing that. And, you know, I don't think I've told Ben this, and that's obviously the connection. So I feel like maybe time to share it now. I went to Vegas last year, probably the biggest investment I've ever made in myself, to really lock in with a conference or a group or people, right? And to go there during Vegas and be there, go to Vegas during my birthday weekend, and to see not just Ben speak, but Tim Grover and Ed Milet. And to be on the stage, or on the top of the Palms overlooking Vegas, and to see Ed Milet on the stage. Again, haven't told Ben this. Ed Milet is talking about him being in the stands watching like a Tony Robbins or somebody else speak, or a mentor, like at the MGM, and he's pointing to the MGM brand. Right. And he's like, I was in that stage. I was watching that. I was in the audience watching this, thinking to myself, this is Ed talking, top guy in the top guy.
Yeah, right.
Saying, oh, that's going to be me, right? Like that's mine. Like, I got it. But at that time, he didn't know. And as I'm watching all these people come in and out, talk to Ben, talk to Ed, right? Line up, shake hands. I don't network. I don't do that. Again, I didn't know. I'm just there. I felt like I sat in the corner and just watched. But I had a moment. I know right what corner I was looking at. I know who was in front of me, who was left, who was right, and where I was standing, I know what I was wearing. And I watched Ed point at the MGM Grand, talking about the sense of, I'm going to be that person, and I just don't know when and how. And I was watching him, almost feeling and seeing, not me, but a sense of that, like, you're just starting, man. And it's okay that you can sit back and observe, and you don't need to go shake hands right now. It's okay, right? Like, this is your race, run it at your pace, and just soak all this in. And I feel like I've been in this soaking in phase, and now I'm getting ready to jump out the plane, if you will.
Yeah. Good, man. That's great. That's a great story. So your storyteller attributes there. So no, it's going to be fun watching your journey. And, you know, it's been fun watching Alan Stein's journey, because now he's crushing it, and he's actually been on Ed Milet's show. And he's been on some other programs. So I'm like, man, I remember when he was in my corner bar here, just singing songs. So you briefly mentioned it, and then I asked some other questions, but how post-career, how did you deal with that? Like, how did you make sense of that in your mind, of it's over, and how did you cope with that, and the mindset, and how did you handle that? Yeah. To come out the other side from an injury like that.
Yeah. How'd I handle the post-career?
Yeah.
I had to find a way to close the chapter. One of my old kind of friends, he was with the Yankees for a couple of years. He had told me, find a way to close your chapter, close the book on your terms. It's like, I know you had a surgery, but like, you got to find a way to close it on your terms. So in some, right, that's going to independent ball, that's going to Japan, that's whatever it is, like, find a way to close it. So what I did is I went back to my junior college again, because it was near and dear to me. And I coached those guys, those kids, while I was rehabbing, still trying to play. And I'll never forget, I told this story before, where I needed to have a moment with my dad. And it was like 20 months after at this point. And I felt like it just wasn't there. The ball wasn't coming out. And they had me on, these guys I was coaching, to go pitch. And I went and pitched at the inner squad. I had my dad come out, and I had my other buddy also come out. And you can see he's like behind this fence, way behind, where he can see me pitching, but he wasn't in the actual stadium of my junior college. My dad was sitting in the stands, and somebody had the gun up. I'm 20 months past recovery. Like, I'm on. Like, I should be ready to go. People are waiting to hear from me. 82, 80, 81, 84, you know, a 9-hole hitter laces a double off me. I'm throwing as hard as I can. I'm long tossing. I'm doing everything. I come off, Guy was like, you're 80 to 83. You hit 83 once. My dad's there, and I'm like looking at him. I give him a big hug. I still, it still gets me a little emotional. I gave him a big hug, right? He knew it was it. I knew it was it, right? We hugged there at my junior college, which was like a foundation for me. Cried. The next day, I went in and talked to my coach, who I still hold dear to my heart, right? Steve Frem. Told him, and he was like, I know, I knew, right? But like, this is something you have to come to find out, right? He could see the ball coming out of my hand. And that was my way. I needed to close the chapter. And for me, that was the start of it. Now, again, it took 7 years to talk about it, to release it, as I shared earlier. And that's what I try and help other people do, whether it's athlete, military, you're an educator, whatever you're trying to release, you got to find a way to close that chapter on your own terms. And for guys like myself who played, a lot of their parents are invested in it. And that's oftentimes the last person or the last moment of processing that they give is to go celebrate their career with their parents. Dinner, talk about it, write about it, hit me up, right? Like, I want to hear about it. I want the wins. I want the losses. I just talked to my shortstop from the Rockies. My man, Joey Wong, Oregon State coach, one of the best, probably the best infield I've ever played with in my life. He spent 11 years in minor leagues. We had coffee. It's like, Joey, dude, you just had one of the best careers you could, like, what a dream. Have you thought about what you did? He's like, man, I finished playing and got right into coaching. I'm like, man, find a way to just acknowledge the beauty that you just had. And we did over coffee. Like, it was awesome. Joey, I know you don't watch social media, but
what a moment with you and your dad. Like, I'm picturing me and my children. There's nobody, I don't know your relationship with your dad, so I'm making another assumption. If he's there, he's watching you, he hugs, he cries with you. I'm going to assume that is a great relationship, right? And so he's there from the get, right? He's there at 5, he's there at 10 years old, he's there at 12 years old, he's there at 18 years old for all of that. And to sit there and know it's over with that support and say, hey, like, I got you, that sort of thing. It's like, what a great moment, man. I'm glad you shared that. When you are at that level of an athlete and you've invested that much and you're on the mound and you throw and it's 82, don't you? You don't even need to look at the gun, do you?
Nope.
You knew, right?
100% knew.
Yeah. So what did you miss? So when it's over, right? There was the dream of going to the show and the league, right? There's the thing that I think about. I would think about that. Like, this is what I believe, and I said it today in some content I was creating about. Don't ever apologize for trying to reach the best. Like I think in my consulting days and the teams that I work with professionally, I'm like, yeah, we should talk about what the best is. We should identify what the best are in teams and organizations and companies. And we should try to unpack that and see what we are capable of and how we can try to strive for that. Right. So I think you should do that. So your dream of, hey, I'm going to make it to this league and I'm going to make it to the show. Like, I think that's what you should be doing. Then you unpack the systems and to figure out what you have to do to make it there. But there are the other things of, I didn't make it and what you are missing from that. So I'm wondering, like, competitiveness, competition, getting out and working for something every day, locker room stuff, being a part of a team. I went out to lunch. Sorry for this story, but
please.
I went out. The best week of basketball. I coached small college basketball for a long time. I grew up in Seattle, and I grew up in the 90s of Seattle. Graduated high school in 91, so the 80s, 90s of Seattle, and Seattle had the Seattle Supersonics. The head coach for the Seattle Supersonics, when they were really good with Gary Payton and Sean Kemp, was a coach named George Karl. George Karl was a dude I looked up to.
Yep.
And loved him.
Yep.
And I'm in Detroit coaching small college basketball. George Karl got fired from the Denver Nuggets, 6 months earlier. I'm sitting at training camp with the Detroit Pistons. We were very close with the people with the Pistons. I went to every training camp practice and many of their practices throughout the year. It was awesome. And I'm sitting there in training camp and George Karl walks in. And he sits down right next to me. And I'm like, this is awesome, right? I was a young kid in my early 20s, and it was awesome. And he looks at me when the practice is over, and he says, where are we going to dinner? And I'm like, this is awesome. Anyway, I spent the whole week with him.
Yeah.
Picked him up at his hotel, went to lunch, went to dinner, went to Piston practices, took notes, talked all this sort of stuff. It was awesome. But anyway, when I'm out to lunch with him one day, and keep in mind, he had just got fired. And we're sitting at Knapp's Dairy Bar in downtown Rochester Hills, Michigan. Knapp's Dairy Bar, and he's eating a chocolate sundae or chocolate shake. And he gets emotional and he cries. He gets choked up and he starts to cry. He said, George, this is the first time in my life I am not a part of a team. And I'm really struggling with it. And you start thinking about that. He went to college and played at North Carolina, and then he got involved in the league, and now he's coaching, or he was playing professionally. Then he was coaching. He went to Madrid, Spain. And then he was in the NBA, and he was in the CBA, and then he was with the Nuggets, and he's with Seattle, and all this sort of stuff, right? And now he's unemployed, and he doesn't have a team. And it affected him that much that a grown man was sitting at Knapp's Dairy Bar in Rochester Hills, Michigan, crying. And I was like, wow. That's it. That was impactful to me. So my question is, other than trying to reach your dreams, goals, and ambitions of making it to the league, right? Was there a part of that as well? The team, the competitiveness, the work habits and ethics that you had on a game you love? Like, what did you miss from that? All of the above?
Short answer, yes. All right, I think there's the competitiveness that, of course, like stands out. The team, I think I shared this a little bit. We didn't talk much about it before when we talked, a week ago. But for me, it's the relationships.
Yeah.
It always has been. And quite frankly, probably always will be. And I didn't realize that as much until I started to realize about what I missed. And people will say like, oh, I miss the locker room. I miss the guys. I'm like, yeah, duh. Right? Some people, I miss the competition. Awesome. There's other ways to compete. But when they would say the relationship with the guys, I then would say, or this is my thought is, but what about the guys? And what about those relationships? And people can't really answer that. Because what happens in the minor leagues, right? Kentucky, New York, Alabama, right? Like you're all there. And then you just go home. But yet I just spent 8 months battling, learning, sacrificing time with my family and my friends to be part of a team where everyone is quite literally an individual. Because in the minor leagues, we're not, this ain't Chabot in Hayward. This isn't Long Beach State. This is, I'm trying to make it to the league.
Yeah.
So for me, I think what I realized was like there was a sense of ownership that I had as a professional, but I missed the relation. I missed the conversations and being able to find out what matters to these people's life. I want to know about that, and I don't have access to that anymore. One of my favorite things to do to this day is when I'm in a city, hitting up some of my guys. Hey, where are you at? What are you doing? I want to hear all about the 4 kids that you got. Like, I want to buy your kids ice cream. Like, I cherish those relationships, and it has nothing to do with baseball. Like, it has nothing to do with it. And to me, the relationship.
Right. We're having some audio issues right now. If you're, are you still there? You there? Yep.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Right.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, you're back. You're back. I got you.
Awesome. We can re-record or you can edit, whatever, chop it up.
Yeah, I got you.
What was the last thing you heard me say?
Yeah. No, that it was about those relationships. How do you position that now? Those experiences, right? So what you have me thinking about, and we talked a little bit about this the last time we were together, is wouldn't it be great if we had professional environments like that? Like if it was, there should be a sense of competition, but achievement with one another, relationships with one another, connection with one another, shared goals, shared vision, shared outcome, right? Shared suffering, being on a bus and living in, hotels and going out and grinding when you're in the heat of Alabama, in July, right? And just knowing that you're in this all together, right? I'm wondering why our professional teams, sales teams, marketing teams, whatever it is, why we can't have that same connection. And maybe that's exactly is that what you're doing now? That I feel like that is a message that you might have professionally as you build your company.
Yeah, I think you're catching me right before it, George, which is kind of great. It's serendipitous, really. I think that we forget the value, right? Leaders forget the value of having a good team. And when you find it again, light bulbs go off. You're like, oh, wait, I remember this. I remember when I was on this team and I knew right where my guy was going to be, right? I'm dribbling down the court, and it's not that I need to tell my guy where to go. I'm throwing the ball to that corner because I know that in about approximately 10 seconds, my guy's going to be there and he's going to have a corner jumper, right? Forgive me here, I'm a Warriors fan, right? It's Draymond throwing the ball over to Steph, knowing he's going to be there to lock it in, right? But it's this it's like they know the value of having that team with them again. Yeah. And then once you find it, we forget about it and we assume that this is just how it is until we don't have it anymore.
Right.
And what I've realized, at least in some of my work, both in the communication world and some of my group coaching that I'm getting ready to launch, as much as I understand the importance of masterminds and people coming together, I get the framing of it. I'm not a big fan of the word mastermind. And again, I know in the industry, this is what a lot of people do. Because for me, I don't have the content. And that's not how my group coaching is going to be. I told you it's connection. The content to me is you, George. The content is my guy Murray. The content is my guy Mike, who's showing up, and they have something unique that they bring to the table and they want to get solved. And for me, the only way to build the connection with your team members is to give them the space and to acknowledge and to be able to dance and facilitate that conversation and connection. That's different. And that's connection, but it starts with trust. It starts with being vulnerable, and it starts with having somebody, ideally me, be the owner of that space and environment so that everyone who comes in and out of my damn room are coming out with space that maybe they do not have anymore. And what better place did we used to have that when we'd be in it in the locker room?
Yeah.
And maybe for some, it's been 25 years since you had somebody cry with you after losing a game. You're not doing that if you're home with your family. Why not?
Hey, man, you're going to kill it, man. You've got me going. I've got goosebumps. Like, sign me up. Sign me up. I'm going to amplify the hell out of this, man. Good for you.
Thank you.
Tell us exactly what you're doing right now. Like I've set that like we're 48 minutes in, and I know we have my hard stop is going to have to relax, right? So that's fine, because if you can keep going, let's keep going.
Yeah.
You got time?
Yeah, I do.
So that's your background, right? And I believe this, like, my coaching career athletically ended before I wanted it to.
Yeah.
It just did. And I was bitter about it. I was angry about it. I was in a blame game. I was frustrated. I felt worthless. I felt unimportant, unvalued, all that, like all of it. Right? Boy, does that experience serve me now. Right? So everything you went through,
yes,
serves you now for what you're doing professionally and the value and impact that you are now bringing to your community and the world, right? So that we've done that. We've unpacked that to a certain extent. I'm sure there's 4 more episodes in there. So What are we doing now, right? Like what is Charlie doing now? What are you building? What's the company you're building, and what's the impact you're developing?
Yes. So what am I building? So I owner of a coaching company, right? As we've talked about, CLR Connection. And when I had originally started this, I was thinking, how do I want to serve selfishly myself 10 years ago?
Love that.
And then how do I want to then serve myself 5 years ago, right? So former athlete transitioning, and then former sales person transitioning to this world of leadership development. And I started trying to answer that question. And I realized that it's not a one size fit all. So for me, let me go learn the skills to equip myself to have a coaching company where now I do have a keynote, right? So there's speaking at the top level, right? I have an overall messaging around what redefining winning looks like in life beyond sport, right? So I have one keynote seen solely as just here's my message, not let me go book on stages. And then I have 4 different areas in which I work with teams and like in a workshop capacity. Right? We're talking presence, we're talking storytelling, we're talking high performance teams, and we're talking about mental performance in sport and business. Those are the 4 ways, and typically that I work with an organization, whether it's tech, whether it's construction, whether it's finance. And then what I'm building, what we've talked about, what I'm really excited about is my group coaching that I'm essentially a week away from launching. And that is called The Connected. And that is being able to create a space for people, right, where they are showing up, small cohort, so it's intimate enough, right, where the content is you. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cohorts where there's all a unique connection that you all have, that I, as the person who's leading the sessions, am facilitating a community around that. We'll see where that goes. But I'm really excited about that because I think that that group setting, the way I've done it in the past and the way I intend to do it moving forward, is truly rooted in what I love: relationships, connection, and having a space where you can show up and be who the hell you are. And we don't have that in most of the spaces we are in because we're trying to be somebody we aren't.
Yeah.
And that's coming from somebody who's been that guy.
Yeah. How hard was it? And listen, if you've made it this far in the podcast, I'll make sure that in the show notes that you look at the show notes and you get all the access to Charlie's businesses and all the social media that we'll put in there. How hard was it for you to go from an athletic environment where, and I'm going to make another assumption here, great leaders, great team builders, great communicators, great purpose and vision for outcomes, to now you're in the corporate world where maybe a lot of that is void and you don't see it, and you don't, and maybe you did see it. Maybe you got plugged in immediately with some professional companies and organizations that had these great leaders that were just dynamic, and you're like, oh, okay, this is what I'm used to. That was not my experience. Like, I went from like being surrounded and studying great leaders and being mentored by great coaches and great motivators and great and very inspirational people, to now I'm in this industry. I'm like, man, like there's a gap. Like, it was very frustrating for me. Did you have that same experience? And then if you did, like, how did you handle that? And maybe that's also on me being too maybe arrogant and like, I know everything, or this is ridiculous, this is where I came from, and this is no good. And so maybe that's also on me and how I showed up, and maybe I should have shown up different. But what was your experience maybe on that?
My experience on getting into a corporate environment and like leadership management,
yeah, like team dynamics and all that, where you like sport leadership, sport team development is fascinating to me because when somebody wins a national championship, they write a book on team building. John Calipari at Kentucky, he wins a national championship. Now he's the expert and he's the one speaking on all that. And he's writing books, and Nick Saban's got all his books, and he's this guy on culture and coaching and leadership. Right. And so we get that professionally, and then we get that athletically. Then you go to the professional world and you're like, whew, like there's a gap here.
Well, that's what I'm hoping you and I can attack. Right.
Yes. 100%. Right.
The short answer is I didn't have it. I didn't get it. And I think on the reverse side of how you had shared, maybe you showed up, maybe like, oh, I got the answers. I didn't know. And I wanted so much attention that I did not get. So I had to learn from it. I felt like I had great people that were my bosses or managers. Great people. To me, they weren't great coaches. Right. Because I needed so much and I was hungry for it. I wanted it. But again, if they didn't have a background in sport, they didn't realize that I just came from being a professional athlete where I had 5 to 6 coaches at a time. So sitting me in my chair and saying, here's your account list, go call people. I'm like, the hell is that? That's all I get? I'm supposed to play that game?
Right.
And on the other side of it, again, joining a big corporate company, one of the top places you can work for. Right, here I come. I'm the old guy on the floor and I'm 28 years old. And all I'm being coached on is how to set meetings with internal stakeholders to play the game so I can build up my brand. And I'm like, yeah, but I need to learn. I need to learn. I want to be a sponge and no one is doing anything to help me. Yeah. So then I had to go and tap into a whole new side of, all right, this is a you versus you game. And then as I realized going through it in sales orgs and everything, all the companies, startup, big companies, big corporate, and then going to train all these companies, to your point, I'm like, oh, this whole background and sport thing that I've been hiding quite literally on volunteer experience on my LinkedIn is actually the thing that is making you even more dynamic up there. To where when I go in to teach an executive presence training at Google and someone happens to look you up because they're like, who the hell is this young kid coming in here telling us how to present ourselves? And then they find volunteer experience, professional baseball player. And they go, hey, you played professional baseball? Can you tell us about that? And all of a sudden, I open up like, oh, okay, I got something to add here. I did not get it for 7 years until I realized what I wasn't missing. Like I realized what I was missing. And it was, so I tell people.
See, I think that is such a void professionally right now, definitely in the software industry, technical industry of Simon Sinek. I just finished his book, Leaders Eat Last. I mentioned this in some content I created today, but on the first page, in the first or second paragraph, he talks about how organizations spend so much time and their energies building and training managers and no time at all really developing leaders. And there's a distinction there. And I was like, that's right on, right? He said it later in the book, nobody wants to be managed, but everybody wants to be led, right? Everybody wants to be led, towards a mission, a purpose, an outcome, development, goals. Like I want to coach and lead you to your next level of greatness. And we're here to build leaders and we're here to get you. I'm not here to manage you. Like I'm not going to I'm not. There's such a distinction between those two. And I see that void. And I think you spoke to that exact thing. Like, hey, go make these calls. But I need I need coaching, like lead me, help me. Right. It's so important. I find that to be such a void, and that's a void you're attacking, right? That's a void you're going after. Right.
I mean, and that's where it goes back to less theory. Again, I say unconventional. Like the reality is I'm not, and I wear this now, like with pride. I don't have my MBA, no PhD. I didn't go to Harvard. I went to state school, Long Beach State. I haven't closed billions of dollars. I don't have 8 figures on my tool belt of here's what I did. But what I have is actual work, having done trainings and learned and listened. I don't know how many people in my space have had a chance to be able to go in and do 700 plus workshops with some of the top leading companies in the world. And again, I'm grateful for my communications firm that trusted me to be able to go do that. Sure. But to then go do that and then walk out and go, oh, I just needed to simplify. I needed to help them get specific. I need to give them some names of some basic fundamentals that I was raised on and built within the sport.
Yeah.
Let's go.
That's right. But that's big time.
This ain't rocket science.
Right.
And yet here I'm walking into a room with people who are making, I can't even tell you what they're making.
Yeah.
And yet we're talking about listening. Sign me up. Put me in.
Simon Sinek had a talk that I heard online where he was saying almost exactly what you're saying, sitting in those rooms without those degrees and without those awards and accolades and things hanging on walls, right? But what he said, and then somebody called him out. You know, one of these CEOs called him out. Why should we even be listening to you? And his comment was, don't. I have a point of view. I have a perspective. It's up to you to take it or not. This is what I believe. I'm continuing to learn, continuing to get better. This is what I believe. I have a perspective. And I've stolen that a little bit from him, because at the end of the day, like, I even do that athletically with athletes I train. This is just my point of view. There's a million ways to play this game. There's a million ways. There's a million different ways to do it. I'm giving you a point of view or a perspective to try to get you better. You take it or you don't. That's on you. Right.
Well, and that's the humility in your work, and probably why you had a good following with the players that wanted to go to bat for you. And again, that's why if you have a mastermind, like, don't hurt me here. But that's why I don't like that concept, because I truly do believe that it is our minds collectively, and I don't have all of the answers. And the thing that had me stop and not go, right, the biggest part of the imposter syndrome thing I was chasing was, you don't have your MBA. You didn't go to MIT. Right. You didn't have all this thing. And yet here I was, the person coaching and leading these people. Yeah. Who the hell am I? Well, here's a perspective. Yeah, right. Here's a space. Go ahead and be you. I'm going to go ahead and give you what I got. Take it or leave it. But like, this is where I'm at.
I love it. I love it, man. I can't thank you enough. And we do need to wrap this up. I mean, I would love to carve out some more time with you, because, you know, you're going to be a big time guy. I can't thank you enough for this. So what is the best way for people to track you down, get in touch with you, connect with you? Are you on all the platforms? What's the best avenue to get in touch?
Yes. If I was to stack rank the social platforms that I'm on, right, LinkedIn and Instagram are probably 1A and 1B. And then, of course, like, if you're looking for, you know, my website, clrconnection.com, that's where you can find all the stuff. And I'm getting ready to launch the Connected, which is going to be my group coaching cohort. I mean, I haven't even posted this on my social yet, George. So there you go. Platform. But that's where you can find me. And again, just like, I'm grateful to be here, and I'm happy that we were able to connect through the
100%
Coach-to-Coaches program. And I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Yeah. If you've made it this far, like this is, you know, this is me. And again, it's just my point of view, man. This is just my point of view. Just go connect with people. Just go connect with people without any idea of getting anything other than learning, right? Anything. Don't go network. And my former players that got into college coaching, I was like, you don't go network to get a job. You don't go to the Final Four with your resume and just hobnob with people and go identify who the players are so you can get a job and be connected. No, you go to learn, and you go to serve, and you go to take something away that you can then go implement and impact other people around. Like, so go do that. And why do I bring that up? Because like, these people like Charlie, you've really impacted me, man. Like, and so this conversation has really impacted me. And then any other conversations will continue to do that. But your social media, what you're doing, I really believe that I'm going to be able to really witness somebody just go do something great. And it's you and some of these other folks I've been with. But man, you are powerful. You are powerful, and you are doing exactly what you should be doing, man. And I'm thankful that our paths have crossed, man. So really, really thankful for that and grateful for it. So reach out to Charlie on the platforms, look at the show notes, click on all those, connect with him on LinkedIn, Instagram. And those are the platforms that he's on the most. And then your website, and Charlie, really good luck as you kick all this off. I'm really excited for you. All right. Thank you. Thank you for being on the show, Charlie.